I asked my husband to share his late wife's inheritance with my son, but he refused to help because he said my child is not his problem. Am I selfish for demanding fairness and equal treatment for both children? I just need to understand if at any point in all of this I was wrong, if my motherly instinct was too much, if the love for my son turned into selfishness, or if I simply chose the wrong person with whom I tried to build a family. I met German when I was 35. I came from a toxic relationship, one of those that take more from you than they leave you. It took me years to get out, more years to rebuild myself, and the last thing I expected was to love again. But German wasn't like the others. He was calm, mature, he seemed to know what he wanted. He was 38, a widower for 3 years, and had a 10-year-old son, Marcelo. I had Victor, my 11-year-old son, a boy with a strong character and an unbreakable loyalty to his father, even after everything he did to us. German and I connected quickly, partly because of the maturity with which we spoke, partly because of that shared need for a second chance. After 6 months he proposed something: let's move in together. Not on impulse, but because we worked as a couple, as parents. I told him I wasn't sure. Not because of him, but because of the logistics. I worked part-time in an office, completing hours as an accounting assistant. He was a civil engineer with a salary that doubled mine. I explained that if we lived together, I wanted to keep my finances separate because I had a goal: Victor's college fund. I had been saving little by little for years for that. The only thing I was obsessed with was securing a future for him. German didn't hesitate. That's fine. You focus on Victor. I'll cover 80% of the expenses. That way you can save without worry. And he said it so naturally, so convinced, that I believed him. We moved in. The coexistence at first was stable, cordial. Marcelo was reserved, more serious than most boys his age. Victor, on the other hand, was an energetic whirlwind, confrontational, and still upset about the breakup with his father. It was a matter of time before the friction appeared. Marcelo didn't talk much, but German tried to integrate with Victor. He took him to the park, taught him math things, gave him books. Victor rejected him, yelling things like, "You're not my dad." I would hear him through the walls. Sometimes he would burst into tears, other times he would just shut himself in. I tried talking to him many times with both of them. German told me it was normal, that he would take time to adapt. I wanted to believe it because, for the first time, I felt that something was working, even if it was a fragile illusion. One day, everything changed. Victor was 17 when he asked me to accompany him to the hospital. His dad, my ex, had been in a motorcycle accident. I hadn't seen him in years. They only talked through messages from time to time, and I didn't get involved. He wasn't a good father, but he was his father after all. I agreed to go. I assumed we would be there for an hour, maybe less, but what I found was something else. My ex was in bad shape, very bad, a compound fracture in his leg, no insurance, no relatives, just the two of us. The doctor told us bluntly, if he doesn't have surgery in 72 hours, he will lose his leg. The surgery cost 40,000 pesos. I didn't have anything close to that. They looked at us, waiting for an answer as if we were their only way out. My ex asked me for help, he begged me, he swore he would work to pay it back. I told him no, that I couldn't, that I was only there for Victor. Then, my son looked at me with eyes I will never forget. "Mom, what if we use my fund?" I told him no. I told him it was for his college, that I had saved it for years, that it was his future. He insisted, I can't leave him like this. I can't live with that. I broke down and gave in. I signed the authorization, transferred the money, and with every number that disappeared from the account, I felt a part of me break, not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew that fund wasn't coming back. The surgery was a success. My ex thanked us. He cried. He said he would pay everything back before Victor enrolled in college. I smiled and believed, once again, a silent promise. And with that signature, my son's future was tied to the past I was trying to leave behind. But the past has claws, and when you think you've buried it, that's when it pulls you back the hardest. After the surgery, my ex woke up among tubes and anesthesia, with a broken voice. He thanked us. He took my hand with that recycled look of guilt he always knew how to put on. He told me he would never forget what we did for him, that he would work, that he would pay everything back. Before Victor starts college, I'll pay you back in full. I didn't believe him, not entirely, but Victor did. He swallowed it with the innocence of someone who needs to believe their sacrifice was not in vain. The days passed, the weeks, then months. The phone stopped ringing. My ex started with excuses. He couldn't find a job, his legs still hurt, maybe he could pay in installments. Then he stopped answering. And one day, he simply disappeared. I asked Victor if he knew anything. No, Mom. Maybe he lost his phone, he said, looking at the floor. I knew it right then. He also knew he had been used, he just didn't want to accept it. I said nothing. What could I say to my son who had just buried his future for an absent father? I had $5,000 pesos in the account. It was all that had survived from the college fund. It had taken me 17 years to save it, and now it wasn't even enough for the first semester of a degree. I went back to working more hours. I started taking on side jobs, small audits, late-night tax consulting. For almost a year, I slept 4 or 5 hours a night. I managed to save another $5,000, $10,000 in total. But for a dream like Victor's, who wanted to be a doctor, that was just a sigh. And then, one ordinary night, while having a silent dinner, German said something that pierced me. Marcelo already has everything ready for his fund. I set it up years ago with his mother. It's almost 100,000 inch. He nodded. He explained that his wife, before she died, left a trust fund with $70,000 pesos for Marcelo, and that they, as a couple, had saved another $30,000 pesos together. Of all that, he had only contributed $15,000. The rest was a maternal inheritance. I didn't say anything at that moment, but something ignited in my chest, a spark, an anger in the shape of a question. That night, I approached him while we were washing the dishes. German, did you ever think about, I don't know, the fund? Not all of it, of course. Just a part for Victor, right? He answered without even looking at me, not even a small part. It's not mine, Clara. I put in a fraction. The rest was left by his mother. It would be dishonest to use it for someone else. But we live together. We raise our children under the same roof. Doesn't that mean something? He dried his hands, turned to me. It means we share a home, not that your financial decisions are my responsibility. Your son is not my son, Clara, just as mine is not yours. That sentence cracked open my chest. I thought about everything I had given, my money, my time, my stability. I thought about how I gave up everything, even my son's fund, to help someone else. And now I was being told that my problems were mine, that Victor was only my son. I locked myself in the bathroom that night. I cried without making a sound, with a towel over my mouth. Not because I couldn't handle the burden, but because I felt invisible, as if I had never been a real part of that house, as if I had only been a temporary visitor the whole time. The next day, I told Victor what was happening. I told him about Marcelo's fund, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a child, hope. Do you think if I behave better he'll help me? I didn't know what to answer. But from that day on, Victor changed. He stopped being defiant. He helped around the house. He took Marcelo to school. He fixed the garden with German. He even started calling him Mr. German, with a mix of respect and caution. And I didn't know whether to feel relief or shame, because that wasn't a reconciliation, it was a child building a strategy. One day I heard him alone in his room, practicing in front of the mirror. Dad, can we talk? Dad, can you help me with this? And my soul broke. And every time I saw him call him Dad, I convinced myself that the sacrifice would be worth it. That was the lie I told myself to keep from breaking down every time I saw him trying so hard to fit into a place that never invited him to stay. For 3 months, Victor became a model teenager. He helped with the shopping, with the household chores, with Marcelo. He spoke to German politely, even with an occasional smile. And German seemed to notice, not with grand gestures, but with less harsh looks, with short phrases like, "Thanks for that, son." Son. A word he used with Marcelo without thinking and that he now threw out sparingly towards Victor, as a test, as a prize. I watched everything without intervening. I was afraid of ruining it, that if I pushed a little, everything would fall apart. So I waited. I waited for the right moment to bring it up naturally, and I thought a family dinner would be the perfect occasion. I set the table like in the old movies: homemade lasagna, cheap wine, warm lights. There were 5 of us: German, Marcelo, Victor, me, and the invisible tension in the middle. After dessert, I spoke up. It's nice to see us like this. I'm glad that after so long, we can say we are a family. Everyone nodded, either out of politeness or because it was easier than arguing. Victor looked at German with something akin to affection. Thanks for everything you do for us. German looked down, uncomfortable. I saw it as my opportunity, so I turned to Marcelo. And you, have you decided which university you're going to? Yes, I got accepted at the State University up north. I'm moving in the fall. How exciting, I replied. And do you know how you're going to manage your fund? Marcelo looked at me. Then he looked at his father. Victor put down his fork. German tensed up. Share it, Marcelo said as if he had heard the question before. I mean, now that you're both older, maybe you could consider splitting it. You know, so Victor can study too. Marcelo laughed drily. I'm sorry. You are brothers. You share a roof. You share a history. And you know what happened with his dad? He doesn't have another chance. And what does that have to do with me? Victor looked at him with rage. Because the fair thing would be to help each other. You have $100,000. I have $10,000 left. I gave everything for my father. I don't even know if I'll be able to study. Marcelo stood up. You acted on your own decision, not for me. And let me tell you something, all these months you've acted like you've changed, but you did it with an expectation, as if I were an ATM. Are you saying I pretended to be a better person so you would give me money? Victor yelled, red-faced. Yes, because I saw it. Because it was obvious, and because if you really cared about this family, you wouldn't be doing this now at a dinner, as if you were closing a negotiation. Enough, German interrupted. I stood up. No, we're going to talk about it now, because your son is being selfish, and you know it. This isn't about money, it's about his brother's future. Marcelo rolled his eyes. He's not my brother. He never was. The air turned to ice. And you, I asked German. Do you think so too? He lowered his head, and then Marcelo said the thing that changed everything. Besides, I couldn't even give you that money if I wanted to. Why? Victor asked, confused. Because legally I can't touch it. Silence. What? My mom left a trust fund. It's locked. I can only use it for my academic expenses, and it's monitored by a legal guardian. My dad can't move it. I can't move it. No one can take it out for a third party. Why didn't anyone say that before? I asked in disbelief. Because I wasn't going to lend it to you anyway, but now I see I wouldn't even have had the option. German finally spoke. We didn't tell you because we knew you wouldn't accept it. You wanted us to believe this was a family, but when it comes to money, you want justice, not unity. And what's wrong with wanting equality? I said, trembling. That you can't demand it in a house you didn't help build. Marcelo pushed his chair back. All right, we're done with the scene because I didn't come here to act. And he left. Victor looked at me as if expecting me to defend him. But I could only think of one thing. They lied to me. They kept quiet about the trust fund. They made me believe it was a choice, not an impossibility. And now, with everything on the table, I was the one left looking like the person who asked for what couldn't be done. But still, I refused to accept it. And in that moment, I understood that I was never part of this family, just another tenant. That's how I felt, as if all these years I had only been renting a space in other people's lives. A stranger who paid with emotional labor, but with no real rights to anything. After that dinner, the atmosphere in the house became unbearable. No one spoke about it. No one mentioned the word fund again. German would come home from work and lock himself in his study. Marcelo stuck to his own things. I simply stopped trying. I didn't cook, I didn't clean, I didn't talk. It was like living in a model of a happy family, but with no people inside. A week later, German broke the silence. You can't just stop doing everything because a conversation didn't go the way you wanted. I laughed. It was a dry, almost lifeless sound. Seriously, is that what you're going to say to me? I'm saying that some things are still working. We had an agreement. I pay 80%, you take care of the rest. We can't let that fall apart just because of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I turned around, incredulous. Hiding from me that the fund was legally untouchable is a misunderstanding. I told you afterward, Clara. Not everything can be told the way you want. Of course, because that would make you seem less selfish. You know what? What you're doing now is emotional blackmail. You expect Marcelo to donate his future because Victor lost his? And that's not justice, it's punishment. I don't want justice, I want fairness. And that doesn't exist when one of the children isn't yours, he blurted out without thinking. I fell silent. Because he finally said it, what he always knew but never dared to verbalize. My son was never his son, he was just the son of the woman he shared a bed with. That night, Marcelo sought me out. I want to talk, he said seriously. I followed him to the patio. We sat down. The night was cold. I don't want this to keep destroying my dad, he began. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. But I've been thinking. I looked at him without saying anything. I can lend Victor $50,000 without interest. He can pay it back however he can, whenever he can. I want this to be over for everyone's sake. For a second, I felt relief, but that relief turned into fury. A loan is what I can do. The trust doesn't allow me to donate, but it does allow me to lend if it's for educational purposes. I've already spoken with the lawyer. You want my son to be in your debt? For him to have to thank you for the rest of his life for something that should be an act of love. I'm not his brother and you're not my mom. Don't expect love where there is none. I stood up. I was shaking, not from cold, but from rage. You're just like your father. And you're just like your ex. You want to save everyone, but you end up ruining everything. German appeared from the gallery. He had heard everything. This is what you wanted, I shouted at him. To have a son who lends, not helps. A home where everything is by contract. A couple who repeats figures as if they were wedding vows. I set the rules clearly from the beginning. Don't blame me if you ignored them, he replied. You know what? I'm leaving. I can't live in a house where everything is measured in percentages and not in affection. I went up the stairs, packed, came down. Victor, get your things. He looked at me with glassy eyes. He said nothing, just obeyed. We crossed the living room with our backpacks on. Marcelo ignored us. German stayed seated on the couch watching television. I waited for him to get up, to say something, to do something, but nothing. I packed in silence, hoping someone would stop me. Nobody did. Nobody stopped me. Nobody yelled, wait. And that hurt more than any argument. Because when someone leaves and you don't lift a finger to stop them, it's because deep down, they were already long gone. We left. Victor and I rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, a one-room place with a kitchen and bathroom that smelled of confinement and defeat. We lived on just enough. I crunched numbers all day to stretch every dollar. Victor looked for work, but without a degree and without contacts, all he found were poorly paid odd jobs or night shifts. Time passed, university registration was approaching, and I couldn't help him. I had no collateral, no savings, no property to mortgage. We applied for a student loan, but it was rejected, does not meet the minimum financial backing requirements. Shame consumed me. I looked at him and felt that I had condemned him to failure because of an emotional decision, for believing for an instant that a family could act like one. I talked to Victor about it. He didn't blame me, but his eyes said everything his mouth didn't dare to pronounce. And then, in the most desperate and humiliating act of my entire life, I went back. I went back to the house, to that house I once thought was my home. It was Saturday afternoon. I knocked on the door. German opened it, looking at me as if he didn't understand why I was there. Marcelo appeared behind him with his phone in his hand. I need to talk, please. There's nothing to talk about, Clara. Just listen to me. 1 minute. He let me in. I was wrong, I said. I acted on impulse, but I thought that after so many years we could fix it. There's no fixing it, he cut me off. This is over. German, don't do this to Victor. He's a good kid. He deserves a chance. I'm not going to sacrifice my son's future for decisions I didn't make. Not yours, not your ex's. Don't look at me like that. Victor is not my son, he never was. I don't know what hurt more, that he said it out loud or that he said it in front of Victor. You're a selfish person, I said, trembling. You and your son, who think you own the world because you have money and a nice last name. Watch your tone, Marcelo said from the stairs. Or what? Are you going to lend us money again with conditions? With your hypocritical martyr face. Stop, Mom, Victor shouted. Enough. But I couldn't stop. German came closer, asked me to leave. Victor took a step forward. Don't talk to my mom like that. Marcelo came down the stairs. Your mom can't come to my house to spit venom and then play the victim. It's not your house, Victor yelled. She built it too. And then a push happened. Another. And chaos. German tried to separate them, but it was too late. They started throwing punches. Messy fists, accumulated rage, years of tension exploding in seconds. I screamed, the neighbors did too. And someone, I don't know who, called the police. They arrived in 5 minutes. Uniforms, questions, flashlights. They separated the boys. German showed his swollen eye. Marcelo had a split lip. Victor was bleeding from his nose and I was just crying. The officers asked us for our IDs. They asked if we wanted to press charges. German shook his head. No, not this time. But the next time they show up here, I'm filing a complaint, he added without even looking at me. We left in silence. That night at home we didn't eat, we didn't talk. There was only darkness and the certainty that something had been broken forever. And as the patrol car drove away, I understood that the justice I was seeking had left me all alone. It's been a week and no one is talking to me. Not German, not Marcelo, not even the friends who once told me I was strong for starting over. Now I'm the crazy one, the ex who made a scene, the woman who ruined her new family for wanting equality. And that's fine, I can be that, the villain of the story, the one who yelled at a dinner, the one who demanded what wasn't hers, the one who forced affection, the one who, according to them, crossed every line. But you know what? I'm also the mother who emptied her account to save the leg of her son's father, the one who worked to exhaustion so he could have a minimal chance. The one who endured rejection, silence, indifference, and still cooked, cleaned, and turned the other cheek. And in return, what did I get? A husband who never saw me as family, only as one more room in his effect-mortgaged house. A stepson who calculated every word, every gesture, as if his college fund were the center of the universe, and a house where everything was measured in contracts, clauses, and percentages. The perfect family, with conditions in fine print, because it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about seeing my son systematically excluded. Marcelo had a protected future, secured since he was born. Victor had to beg for affection, respect, and opportunities. And when I asked for a gesture of empathy, a single act of humanity, they told me I was crossing the line. German told me that my decisions were not his responsibility, that Victor was not his son, yet he filled his mouth talking about love, family, agreements. And what kind of father makes a distinction between the children who share his table? What kind of man sits and watches his stepson's mother fall apart and does nothing? I didn't ruin that family. That family was already broken from the moment love came with conditions. It just took me too long to realize it. Now, Victor has no college, he can't get a loan because I have no way to back it. And German lives his life as if nothing happened, with his brilliant son, his intact fund, and the peace of mind of having protected what was his. Marcelo offered me a loan. I rejected it because that wasn't help. It was an eternal reminder of who deserves and who doesn't. The last time I tried to talk to German, he told me I was a time bomb, that I couldn't see beyond my own pain, that I was always a victim of everything I refused to let go. Maybe he's right. Maybe I was my own worst enemy, maybe I did become the villain of my own story. But I also know that I was the only one who fought for both sons equally, the only one who asked for the same for everyone, even knowing they would hate me for it. And if that makes me selfish, then I prefer to be the selfish one who gave everything than the neutral one who allowed everything. Because in the end, there is something they can't take from me. I loved with everything I had, they only took care of what was theirs. Comment 1. Your son lost his college future because you decided to save the guy who ruined your life. It wasn't German's fault, it was your impulsive decision. Own it. Response: I know it was my decision. I never denied it. But what kind of mother would I be if I watched my son beg for his dad and did nothing? I would have hated myself forever if I didn't help him. I did it out of love, not stupidity. Comment 2. Expecting your husband's son to share an inheritance left by his dead mother is absurdly cruel. That money wasn't yours. And you know it. Response: I didn't ask him to give it to me. I asked him to share it with his brother. Yes, his brother. Because they shared a life for years. But it seems that in that house everything is mine and yours, never ours. Comment 3. Honestly, I feel sorry for Victor. But you projected everything onto German, expecting him to replace what your ex didn't give you. That's not love, it's emotional dependency. Response: German promised me we would be a family. I never asked him to replace anyone, only to treat him for what he is, a boy with dreams, with a history, who was also part of his life. I didn't expect a father, just a little empathy. Comment 4. You wanted to pass off a debt as charity and a loan as betrayal. If they offered you $50,000 without interest, say thank you and shut your mouth. It's more than most people get. Response: And would you thank someone who gives you something just to remind you every day that you owe them? I wasn't raised to depend on favors disguised as help. If you had children, you would understand. Comment 5. Your son only started being good when he thought he was going to get his college paid for. He literally manipulated him. And you applauded it. Do you really not see how sick that sounds? Response: He didn't manipulate him. He learned to adapt, to survive, because he understood that only by being perfect would he be treated with some respect. If you call that manipulating, then you've never had to fight to fit into a house that treated you like a nuisance. Comment 6. German's only mistake was not divorcing you sooner. You demanded that he love your son, but you never showed that you loved his. Such double standards. Comment 7. You signed the 40,000 pesos check. You took it out. Nobody forced you, and now you blame everyone but your reflection. Your son needs a mature mother, not a martyr. Comment 8. You say they treated you like a tenant, but you came in with your own limits, separate finances, cold agreements. You wanted independence until you needed help. Comment 9. Refusing to cook, clean, and live together because they didn't give you money is literally emotional manipulation. You are not a victim, you are a passive abuser. Response: I wasn't manipulating. I was exhausted. Do you know what it's like to give your all every day and get indifference in return? I reached my limit. I'm not a saint, but I'm not an emotional domestic servant either. Comment 10. Your son didn't go to college because of you, not because of German, not because of Marcelo. You decided to spend the entire fund on your ex.